Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to IGCSE Success, your one-stop shop for everything IGCSE English. First of all, before you even start watching the rest of this video, and yes, I'm talking to you. What? I heard through the grapevine that you still haven't downloaded my No Stress Just Success study guide for paper 1. Well guys, here it is in all of its glory. And let me just say that a lot of blood, sweat and tears went into creating this. Do not worry, if this is the first time hearing about it, I will be sure to link it in the description box below just for you guys. I strongly recommend going through it with a fine tooth comb, printing it out if possible, making notes and doing the suggested paper alongside it. Then come back to this video. And with all that said and done, let's go. So let's get started, and I guess guys, welcome to my 2025 edition of my CRAMMERS guide. And in many ways I'm proud to say it's a bit more timely than in previous years. This is part walkthrough, part top tips, but it's not really designed for those starting out on their IGCSE first language English journey, hence the quote-unquote CRAMMERS guide. Now, I'll be using one paper as, I guess, the basis for all answers, but I won't be reading the inserts or annotating, mainly because I don't want this turning into a mammoth video. In the same breath, if you are after a proper deep dive, including my rather wacky thought processes and how I approach each question, do check out one of my live walkthrough videos. I think there's a few. And in these videos, I truly do torture myself for nearly 2 hours, so I can really empathize with you guys. Or simply download my No Stress Just Success guide. And as mentioned in the intro, I will link it in the description box if you have not downloaded it already. So the paper you'll need to download for any of this video to make sense is from the October-November series, and it's the 0500/12 paper. One of the most recent ones readily available, I believe, and I will include a link to it in the description below. Again, I won't be reading the inserts in this video. This is more of a quote unquote what should your answers actually look like type guide. So you'll need to, of course, read the inserts independently, annotate them, and plan your approach yourself. So let's start with the nuts and bolts of the exam itself. Hopefully there's nothing new here, but it's always good to make sure that we are all on the same page before diving in. So the paper is of course 2 hours long. It's a mammoth paper. There are 80 marks available. It's 50% off your overall FLE grade, the other 50% being either paper 2 or the coursework component. Reading and writing are both assessed, even though it's a predominantly reading paper, and the paper consists of smaller sub-questions and 3 core questions, or 3 biggies as I like to call them. So if you've already downloaded my No Stress Just Success guide, you'll already be familiar with my suggested timings. These are the same timings I give to my Year 11s every single year. A quick reminder though guys, these timings are just that, suggested, and they don't factor in reading the inserts, annotating or planning. I'm sure you can connect the dots and realise there's a lot of content to get through, and you really don't have minutes or even seconds to waste. Just be really vigilant with your timings, guys. Keep an eye on the clock. You do not want to leave yourself with 20 minutes for the extended writing response when it's worth a whopping 25 marks. So my suggested timings are the smaller sub-questions, so that's the 1s and the 2s. Spend about 30 minutes. Try and get them done as quickly as possible. Of course, the summary question, the first core question, 20 minutes. Writer's effect, 30 minutes. And then question 3, extended writing. I think you need at least 40 minutes to do it well. Right, let's kick off by looking at the sub-questions for the 1 strand, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you can pick up some easy marks here. So let's just read the questions for at least some context. So question 1A reads, which type of African elephant can many children identify just from a picture according to the text. So just from that word which, we obviously know this requires an explicit idea, which is usually found close to the top. That's worth 1 mark. 1B, using your own words, explain what the text means by very little in line 4, and highly elusive. The adjective elusive could be tricky for some. Lines 4 and 5. And then question 1C, reread paragraph 3, beginning with in March 2021 and ending with their preservation. Give 2 reasons why the IUCN updated the forest elephant status to critically endangered. And of course that is worth 2 marks, so 2 ideas are needed. So just take note of the annotations on the right, beginning with the first one. So as mentioned before, you just have to locate an explicit idea. Usually it's 1, sometimes it's 2, and usually this idea or these ideas are close to the top. For the next set of questions, the synonym question, answer using synonyms. If you are struggling, yes, you can use a short sentence, but do not forget to explain or define both strands. And the last little note, usually this requires 2 explicit ideas. Do pay attention to the command verb, obviously give. Usually that requires an explicit idea. And pay attention to the number of marks allocated as mentioned before, okay? 2 marks, 2 ideas, 3 marks, 3 ideas, etc. And if a question is bullet pointed, short answers are required. Do not waste time writing these lengthy, unwieldy sentences. So let's read the next set of questions. So 1D, reread paragraphs 4 and 5, beginning with genetic analysis and ending with curved tusks. Identify 2 methods by which scientists could tell that the savanna elephant and the forest elephant were different types. So again, bullet points, 2 marks. We need 2 short answers. And then the final strand is explain how the physical features of forest and savanna elephants are different. So you'll notice here 3 marks are available, no bullet points. So writing 3 simple sentences is absolutely fine. And do pay attention to where you are directed to reread, because you can really lose valuable marks by obviously focusing on the wrong paragraph, and trust me, it happens every single year. Sorry, this is the final strand, okay? They just keep going and going. So 1E, reread paragraph 6, beginning with if we care about and ending with many other animals. Using your own words, okay? Notice how it's in bold, guys. Use your own words as much as possible. Explain how the rainforest may be affected if the forest elephant ceases to exist, So 3 ideas are expected, and use your own words as much as possible. Obviously, scientific, any kind of jargon, geographical terms are absolutely fine. And as a side note, you'll see when I put the answers on the screen shortly, you may want to consider using the discourse markers firstly, secondly, lastly, as it may help you remember that 3 things are required for 3 marks. 3 different things and 3 accurate things. Now let's take a look at the answers. By the way, if you are planning on doing this paper, I would definitely stop the video here and come back to it once you have jotted down the first lot of short answers. So I'm just going to whiz through these nice and quickly. So the first answer is savanna elephant, significantly smaller. So significantly being a synonym for very, smaller for little. Notice how I've defined both strands. Obviously there are other suitable answers. Highly, I've used the synonym very. Mysterious for elusive. Again, there are other options available. And for 1C, I've put suddenly declined by a staggering 86%. So I've just copied that straight from the text because I don't need to use my own words, and that most people had never heard of them. And I get, how many marks is that? 4, 6, 7 marks already. Lovely. Then for 1D, we have genetic analysis and compared physical differences. And then for the next stranded question, we have firstly, the forest elephant is smaller. Secondly, the savanna elephant is lighter in colour. And lastly, they both have different tusks. And notice again, I've used firstly, secondly, lastly, which is a good shout if you're likely to forget that 3 things are needed. And there you go, guys, another easy 5 marks. Now for 1E, I have put, firstly, fewer fruit trees would grow as seeds wouldn't spread. Secondly, less carbon would be absorbed and animals would lose habitats. And lastly, small trees would dominate and block larger trees. So again, 3 separate sentences there. Firstly, secondly, lastly, 3 marks, or sorry, 3 points, 3 marks. And to conclude the first set of smaller questions, let's look at some top tips, okay? So first of all, make sure that you follow the order of the sub-questions to work through text A systematically, so a top to bottom approach. Pay attention to paragraph references and the command verbs in the instructions to guide your responses. Use your own words when requested and avoid copying long sections of the text directly. Avoid relying on one section of the text for answers if another part is referenced in the question. Be concise, avoid unnecessary material and focus on answering the question as set. Make sure your responses accurately communicate details from the text. Remember that writing is not assessed, but answers should still be clear and precise to show comprehension. So if you're making lots of grammatical hiccups left, right and centre and it impedes the meaning that you're trying to communicate, that could be problematic, okay? Now let's swiftly move on to the first core question, the first big question, the summary writing task worth 15 marks, 10 for reading and 5 for writing. Again, I'm going to read the question aloud because I want to draw your attention to something really important. This question is asking you to summarize 2 bits of information or 2 strands, and that's a really big deal, so do not miss it. So let's take a read. Okay, read text B, volunteering with elephants, in the insert, and then answer question 1F on this question paper. What makes volunteer tourism in an elephant park worthwhile for the animals and, notice the conjunction and in bold, for the human volunteers according to text B? You must use continuous writing, not note form, and use your own words as far as possible. Your summary should not be more than 120 words. And of course, 10 marks are available for the content of your answer and up to 5 marks for the quality of your writing. Remember guys, if it asks you to summarize 2 strands, make sure you keep somewhat of a fairly equal balance. Now you can either write 1 paragraph or 2 slightly smaller paragraphs, whatever feels more natural for you. And when it comes to, I guess, the kind of non-negotiables, make sure you highlight the relevant ideas from the insert. So text B is just for the summary question, of course. You want to number your ideas, more on that later. Use a suitable tone and reword where appropriate. So let's take a read of a top band summary. Do take note of the style, language, register and so on. And again, if you haven't done this question yet, I'd probably stop the video here and come back once you have. Firstly, for the elephants, volunteer tourism improves welfare because the money paid by volunteers funds conservation efforts whilst longer stays provide consistent care. Secondly, by working with ethical parks instead of exploitative ones, volunteers protect elephants from harmful tourism. Moreover, volunteers support elephants' natural behaviours by observing, feeding and caring for them without forced contact. Volunteers also benefit personally. Training builds confidence, social media helps form friendships early, and daily collaboration boosts teamwork and independence. In addition, tasks like cleaning and data recording foster responsibility and a sense of purpose. Lastly, a balance between work and free time allows volunteers to recharge, explore nearby towns, and experience local culture alongside their meaningful work. So let me just quickly explain, guys, how I approach that summary. So first of all, I made sure I focused on only the key ideas, the main points that the examiners actually want to see, and left out all of the extra details. Otherwise, there's no way you'll stay within the word limit. And with any summary question, I always aim for around 8 to 10 ideas. That's plenty. With this particular summary task, I think I've included more just through the use of complex sentence structures. Now, I also grouped related points together. This is really important. You need to think about how you can logically connect ideas. So all the information about the elephants came first, and then I moved on to how the volunteers themselves benefit. Structuring it this way just makes it much easier to follow, and of course using more complex sentence structures helped with this too. Now, I mentioned numbering your ideas before. Again, shameless plug, do download my No Stress Just Success guide, because it breaks down how to sort of number your ideas, how to group them together. And in terms of, I guess, style and structure, and to keep the flow clear, I've used linking words or discourse markers such as firstly, secondly, moreover, and finally, or lastly, I think it was. These are simple but effective for, I guess, helping the reader and you track the ideas that you include. And throughout, I've kept a rough eye on the word count. It's slightly over. Don't worry if you write 123 or even 125 words, you are not going to lose marks. Yeah, do keep a rough eye on the word count, guys. You don't want to get halfway through and realize you've completely overrun, and it's much easier to stay within the limit if you're disciplined as you go. You do get, I think it's 1.5 sides of paper in the answer booklet. Generally speaking, if you've got normal size handwriting and you're going on to the second page, you've probably written too much, but of course it depends on how many words that you can fit on one line. Now let's take a look at some top tips for the summary question. First of all, start with firstly and link ideas clearly. So as mentioned before, use discourse markers like firstly, secondly, moreover, meanwhile, in addition, lastly or finally, etc. And these would also help with your writing marks as well. Remember, there's 5 allocated towards marking. Do cover both parts of the question equally. If there are 2 strands, look for the conjunction, and it's always in bold, and sort of 4 ideas for each is absolutely fine. Group ideas naturally, look for those logical patterns. Try to put 2 to 3 ideas into one complex sentence instead of listing facts or ideas separately. You definitely don't want to be writing lots of simple sentences, because trust me, you won't be able to include enough ideas within that sort of suggested prescribed word count. And do use more complex sentence starters or sentences, and these of course will allow you to group your ideas together effectively. And my last few tips: remember to reword key points instead of copying. Use as much as your own words as possible. Keep the meaning but change the phrasing. Keep a balanced and academic tone, so avoid any subjectivity, avoid I think, it's good, etc. Sound factual, sound confident, sound objective. And as mentioned, try and stick to the word count, guys. So after you finish the summary, question 1F, you get a bit of respite. Well, sort of. Hopefully the final set of smaller questions shouldn't be too challenging though, but do be careful. It's easy to lose track of time and spend far too long on some of them, especially when you are frantically scanning the text trying to locate synonyms. Let's take a read of the questions. So question 2A, identify a word or phrase from the text which suggests the same idea as the words underlined. And the first sentence is, different terrains and landscapes were spread far and wide over River Game Reserve. The second sentence is, the rain on the night that the elephants arrived was extremely heavy. The third sentence reads, the elephants escaping the game reserve were moving quickly and with heavy footsteps towards their former home. And the last sentence, Cilicia was strong enough to have pulled Lawrence into the elephant enclosure. Gosh, how terrifying. Now remember guys, don't try and locate these exact sentences from TextSee. I don't know why you would, but some of my students try and find them. They are made up sentences. However, of course, they link to the story. Instead, scan TextSee carefully and find a word or phrase that could replace the underlined part while still making sense. And that is the test, I guess. Once you think you found the answer, just read it to yourself in your head. Is the sentence grammatically sound? More than likely, it is the correct answer. And usually, guys, you can find these in chronological order. So the first one is usually close to the top, the second one underneath, etc., etc. Not always, but that is the general pattern. Now let's take a read of question 2b. So using your own words, again in bold, explain what the writer means by each of the words underlined. So you will find this section in TextSee. So just as the trunks pulled into the game reserve, a tire exploded and the vehicle tilted dangerously in the mud. My heart froze at the elephant's terrified trumpeting and screeching. It wasn't until dawn that we managed to get them into the secure enclosure. Now, the easiest way to approach these questions is, of course, to use an appropriate synonym. But again, a short sentence is absolutely fine if you are struggling. Now, just make sure that you check how the word is being used in context. For example, froze is being used idiomatically here. So yeah, a short sentence, a synonym, both are absolutely fine. Just make sure it fits the meaning in the passage. So let's take a read of 2C. And I have to say, a lot of students do not know how to approach this question and they lose sometimes a couple, sometimes they lose 3 marks. Okay, so take note of this. But before I explain how to approach it, let's read the question. So use one example from the text below to explain how the writer suggests Lawrence's feelings about the situation with the elephants. Use your own words in your explanation. So let's read the paragraph. So night after night, Lawrence stayed as close to the secure enclosure as he dared, singing to those angry elephants, talking to them and telling them stories until he was hoarse. With tender determination and no shortage of foolhardiness, Lawrence breached Cilicia's terror of humans and gained her trust. Now, do treat this as a kind of watered down writer's effect question. Take note of the information at the top. I think it's almost always about thoughts and feelings. So you're going to be including a series of adjectives or abstract nouns to address the focus of the question, okay? Again, take note of what is at the top. You choose one image only and you need to make 3 different points for 3 marks, and I will show you what that looks like shortly. So the first synonym is sprawled, which means the same as was spread far and wide. The second one, torrential, which means the same as extremely heavy. Pounding, which means the same as moving quickly and with heavy footsteps. And yanked, which means the same as pulled. Let's do a quick test. The second one, the rain on the night that the elephants arrived, was torrential. It's grammatically sound. Brilliant for easy marks. So question 2b, another synonym question. Again, there are other answers that would be acceptable, but for exploded, I've put burst. Froze, stopped beating, and screeching, I've put screaming. 3 marks available. So guys, you can see that I've highlighted my image here just to make it easy for you guys to follow. Obviously, you won't be able to highlight on the actual question paper. So I always advise my students to write the quotation on the top line of their answer, which in hindsight I probably should have done. So please don't be highlighting the question paper. You're not allowed to do that. Insert, you can, FYI. Do make sure that you only analyze one image and link it to the character's thoughts and feelings with 3 different points or explanations. So let's take a look at how I've done that. So first of all, the image is Lawrence singing to those angry elephants, talking to them and telling them stories until he was hoarse. So I would write that on the top line. So firstly, this shows Lawrence's dedication as he spends long hours trying to calm them. Secondly, it suggests his compassion because he treats the elephants with kindness rather than fear. Lastly, it highlights his persistence as he continues even when physically exhausted. And again, I would recommend that you use those discourse markers and hopefully they will prompt you to say 3 different things. So yeah, kind of like a watered down version of the writer's effect question. You are to some degree making inferences based on what you've read. But there's really no significant language analysis here, guys. So let's conclude the last of the stranded questions. That sounds so weird. So for 2A, ensure you find a word or phrase from the text that matches the underlined text. Don't lose marks by defining it, which happens every single year, by the way, including with some of my students. Avoid including any redundant material. The word or phrase should replace the underlined text and the sentence should remain grammatically correct. So do that little test that I spoke about before. You can usually find the first answer early in the text with the subsequent answers appearing in chronological order, but not always. For question 2B, check how the words are used within the context before defining them. A suitable synonym or short phrase is fine. And for 2C, make sure you select only 1 example and make 3 inferences based on the focus, which is usually thoughts and feelings. So question 2D, arguably one of the most challenging questions because I guess it deals with language analysis and your ability to select unusual words, phrases or striking images and comment on their effects. It's definitely challenging if you are someone sitting just first language English and not literature. You might not have had as much practice, but it's certainly doable, guys, trust me. Now, there are plenty of videos on my channel breaking down this question, and with me being a literature major, it's a question I enjoy teaching and tackling myself, so do check those videos out. I think I've got a whole playlist. So if you feel like you need to brush up on this skill, definitely do check those videos out. There's a whole range covering this question in depth, guys, I promise you. Now, it's worth 15 marks, so aim to spend around 30 minutes on it. You should be writing 3 good-sized paragraphs, each with 3 quotes analysed properly. Right, let's read the question for context. So reread paragraphs 1 and 2. You might want to star them on your insert. Paragraph 1 begins, whenever Cilicia, the lead elephant, and is about Cilicia and her elephant babies visiting the narrator and Lawrence's home on River Game Reserve. And paragraph 2 begins, Cilicia has a soft spot and is about Cilicia's attitude to Lawrence. Guys, the first time I read this, by the way, I thought Cilicia was his partner or a woman. She's not. She's got a sweet spot for Lawrence. She's an elephant. Close reading, guys. I'm sure some students made that mistake when they actually sat this paper. And the usual wording follows. Explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. Of course, you can include other things. Write about 200 to 300 words. That is a suggested word count. Write as much as you can in 30 minutes. And of course, 15 marks are available for the content of your answer. So no writing marks available, but try and write clearly. Again, if you are making all of these sort of grammatical hiccups and the examiner almost has to try and sort of decipher your answer, or the grammar mistakes that you are making impede meaning, potentially you could lose marks. So again, 2 paragraphs, 3 striking images or words or phrases in each. Start with the explicit meaning and then implicit meaning, and I will show you what that looks like shortly. Oh, and before I show you a model response, be sure to read the information after the ellipsis. It's really important and often neglected. This information tells you what the paragraph is about, which is super helpful if you are struggling to get started, and it can even help you construct your topic sentence. And if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that your topic sentence should always follow the same structure. The overall effect of the language creates an image of. Maybe this is me being pedantic, but this is what I like my students to do. So let's take a read of a top ban writer's effect response. The overall effect of the language creates an image of lively and playful elephants as Cilicia and her babies visit the home on River Game Reserve. Firstly, the writer describes the elephant's trunks immediately curling up like periscopes to scan our house. The writer's use of the verb curl refers to the elephant's trunks bending upwards. Furthermore, the writer's use of imagery suggests the elephant's curiosity as their trunks, reminiscent of sailors using periscopes, scan the area for food and signs of human presence. Secondly, the writer describes the elephant's smelling an appetizing whiff. The writer's use of the adjective appetizing refers to the smell being tempting and appealing to the elephants. Moreover, the writer's use of imagery suggests the elephants experience the world vividly through their senses, with the enticing smell triggering playful anticipation and a sense of mischievous adventure. Lastly, the writer describes the exuberant elephant babies gleefully charging. The writer's use of the adjective exuberant refers to the baby elephants being full of energy, excitement, and lively enthusiasm. Additionally, the writer's use of imagery suggests the elephant babies full of playful energy chase the cat as if caught up in some mischievous game. And as another side note, guys, if you want help with how I've structured this, you can check out the suggested structure in my No Stress Just Success guide. Sorry, another plug. But put simply, it goes like this. Overall effect, quote, zoom in on a powerful word or phrase and mention the explicit meaning, analyze the effect of the image, and you repeat these steps for all 3 quotes before moving on to your second writer's effect paragraph. And try to keep the discourse markers, which I put in red, in your own response. They'll help you stay structured and make sure you don't accidentally miss out any vital steps. Now let's read the second model response. The overall effect of the language creates an image of a deep, affectionate bond between Cilicia and Lawrence, highlighting their trust, warmth, and mutual understanding. Firstly, the writer describes Cilicia having a soft spot for Lawrence. The writer's use of the phrase soft spot refers to Cilicia feeling affection and a special fondness towards him. Furthermore, the writer's use of the idiom suggests that Cilicia treats Lawrence with a familiar trust, almost as if he belongs to her herd. Secondly, the writer describes Cilicia catching a human scent in the air. The writer's use of the verb catching refers to Cilicia quickly detecting or picking up the smell. Moreover, the writer's use of imagery suggests her deep connection to the environment, picking up even the faintest signs of Lawrence's presence. Lastly, the writer describes Cilicia's gentle tip touching Lawrence. The writer's use of the phrase trunk tip touches, gosh that's a mouthful, refers to Cilicia's affectionate way of communicating. Additionally, it suggests a delicate, almost tender form of communication, highlighting the trust and emotional sensitivity Cilicia shows towards Lawrence, as if physical touch replaces spoken language. So just to briefly explain how I put each response together. So I started with a really clear topic sentence stating the overall effect straight away. That's important because it sets the tone and focus for the whole paragraph. Then for each quote, I broke it into 2 steps. First, I explained the basic meaning of the word or phrase, and then I pushed it further by analysing the deeper effect or image it creates. I also made sure to use linking words like firstly, secondly, lastly to keep the structure tight and easy to follow. And notice how each explanation stays anchored to the overall effect. If it doesn't, the phrase does become somewhat redundant and your analysis is much more likely to lose focus. So staying tightly linked to the overall effect is absolutely key for hitting that top band, guys. So let's finish with some top tips. So provide an overview of what the writer is trying to achieve with their language choices and how these examples help to build the overall effect. Focus on quality analysis, not just listing literary devices or copying from the text. Be deliberate in your selections. Choose clear examples that help focus your analysis. Avoid long quotations. Break down the keywords for deeper explanation. You are more than welcome to zoom in several times. Provide 6 examples, 3 from each paragraph. Do not miss opportunities by using fewer, and you certainly do not need to provide more than 6. You're not going to gain any extra marks, guys. And start with the explicit meaning of your chosen words. Then use this as a springboard to dive into deeper analysis and consider the connotations. We are almost there, guys, and look, I've not even read the inserts and it's still a long video. Oh, right, so the extended writing question, definitely a challenging one. I think far more difficult than the writer's effect response, but that's my opinion. Do make sure that you save some brain power for it. It's worth 25 marks. Now remember, there are 8 prescribed text types that you need to know. Anyone could come up, okay? There's no guessing here. There's no rhyme or reason with Cambridge where English is concerned. So they are speech, article, informal letter, journal, interview, formal report, and newspaper report. And do make sure that you brush up on all of these, including their key generic features, before the exam, which is next week. My goodness. So let's read the question for context. So you are Lawrence. You are interviewed about the elephants in River Game Reserve for a magazine article about animal conservation. I wonder if when students read that, when they sat this exam, some wrote magazine article. Gosh, that would be terrible. Anyway, it's not a magazine article task, guys. It's an interview. The interviewer asks you the following 3 questions only, guys. Do not make up additional questions, okay? How did you come to be responsible for the elephants, and what were your concerns before they arrived? What challenges did you face when the elephants came into your care, and how did you deal with them? How are the elephants settling now, and what advice would you give other game reserve owners about elephants? Write the words of your interview and then the usual stuff at the bottom. Base your interview on what you have read in Text C, but be careful to use your own words. Address each of the 3 bullets. Begin your interview with the first question. Write about 250 to 350 words, up to 15 marks available for the content of your answer, and up to 10 marks for the quality of your writing. Now, I put on the right there an interview task, guys. It's quite a nice one because you are marked on the 3 interview responses only. There's no need for any special format or to invent questions. And do pay attention to the conjunction and, which is always in bold if they decide to include it. This is what you base your inference on, how you develop your ideas. Really, really important. If you don't develop your ideas, your response is just going to be full of explicit ideas and your marks will be capped for sure. Right, I'm going to read the model now, but just a heads up, it probably won't be particularly helpful if you haven't read the insert or if you are unfamiliar with how to approach this question. If you're not quite au fait with tackling the extended writing question, check out some of my earlier videos on identifying explicit ideas and developing them relevantly. However, what will be useful is noticing that this is an interview, so I've crafted 3 responses and made sure each one is chatty, upbeat, and uses features of authentic speech like idioms, rhetorical questions, suitable fillers, and discourse markers, etc. So let's take a read of the first interview response. So, that's an interesting question. Well, I became responsible for the elephants shortly after my wife and I bought River Game Reserve when an animal welfare representative asked us to adopt a displaced herd. Concerns? Well, we'd only just taken over the reserve and knew absolutely nothing about looking after elephants. I mean, how hard could it be, right? Well, let me tell you, very hard. We only had 2 weeks to get ready, and the cost of building a proper enclosure nearly made my eyes water. When the huge articulated trucks rolled in, I nearly fell over. I hadn't properly grasped how enormous they'd be, and at that moment I seriously wondered if we'd made a terrible mistake. And even once they arrived, there was no guarantee they'd stay put. Elephants aren't just big, they are bright and emotional too. A wrong move and they could have been straight through the fence and halfway home before we knew it. Where do I even begin with this one? Well, the elephants arrived in the middle of a torrential rainstorm and it took us all night just to get them into the enclosure. Miserable conditions for everyone involved. One of the truck tyres exploded too, terrifying the mothers and babies. It was chaos and honestly pretty dangerous with frightened elephants trying to protect their young. We finally settled them, only for them to escape the next day by toppling a tree onto the electric fence. Hours of work gone in seconds. Finding them was even worse. It took 10 exhausting days of searching on foot, by car and by helicopter, and the fear for the elephants in the local villages was overwhelming. Luckily, the community really pulled together and we got them back safely. Honestly, they're doing brilliantly now. The herd roams the reserve like they own the place. They even swing by a house to sniff around the fruit trees. And these days, even Frances doesn't panic when she sees them. Celicia's come a long way too. She confidently leads the group, greets me like an old friend, and I swear sometimes she even gossips. The babies, full of energy, chasing the cat and causing chaos, a good sign they're growing up strong. If I had any advice, it would be to be patient. Trust has to be earned. One song or story at a time. Oh, and never underestimate them. Elephants are far smarter and sneakier than you think. Always be ready for surprises. Thanks for having me. So my top tips for the extended writing response. So first of all, make your highlighter your best friend. Do highlight the insert. Do plan your route. Have 3 different colours, guys. Identify and highlight a range of ideas. Bullet point 1, aim for 4 to 5 ideas. Bullet point 2, 4 to 5. Bullet point 3, 3+ is absolutely fine. This will mostly be inference based. Look out for that conjunction and again in each bullet point. It tells you what to base your inferences and your development on. If there is no conjunction, still develop relevantly. Exploring thoughts and feelings works really well. And where appropriate, depending on the text type, craft a brief opening to establish a sense of audience and purpose. And this, of course, will earn valuable writing marks from the outset. Now, for most tasks, you are required to assume the role of a character, and to do this effectively, you need to emulate their voice through dialogue, speech patterns, rhetorical devices, tone, any stylistic devices that you choose to use. Do use a range of rhetorical devices or a right forest techniques throughout your piece to enhance authenticity and engagement. Give equal attention to each bullet point. Don't let one dominate at the expense of the others. What usually happens is that students run out of time and bullet point 3 is woefully neglected. And do leave yourself enough time. 20 minutes is not enough to do this question well. So timing is everything with this question and indeed the whole paper. So plan wisely. And lastly, my overall top tips to ensure you get the best grade possible, guys. So read all of the questions carefully. Look out for the command words or verbs and what the question is actually asking you to do. Check the mark, so use the mark allocation to guide how much detail or how many points to include. Use your own words where appropriate. Avoid copying from the text and paraphrase. Answer every part. Don't leave parts of questions blank. Even a short answer can earn marks. Take an educated guess, guys. Probably one of the most important tips is to manage your time effectively. Don't write too much for early questions. Save time for the big ones later. And in the same breath, don't spend too much time on the 1 markers. If you don't know, you can come back to them. Word counts are suggested. However, for questions like 1F, going over 120 marks, significantly over, could potentially cost you marks. Stay focused on the right section, so follow the rubric. For example, only use paragraph 7 and 12 if that's what it asks for. Avoid any kind of extra redundant information, particularly for, I guess, the summary task. And don't forget to show off your skills. For top marks, guys, demonstrate both understanding and writing skill, especially in the extended answers. And please plan your responses. And the last thing I want to say, guys, is good luck. I am rooting for you 100% all the way to the finishing line. Don't forget that you have put in the work, you've built the skills, and now it's about showing Cambridge what you are made of. And it's more than you think, trust me. So stay calm, trust yourself, believe in yourself, and give these exams, not just FLE, every exam that you are sitting, give them everything you've got. And lastly, you are so much more ready than you think. Now go and smash those exams. Until next time, bye-bye.